For those of you that are here with us for the first time, my name is Christopher Salick, and I am the Religious Education Marketing Coordinator here at Ave Maria Press. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. I want to welcome you to the second Religious Education webinar of our series this semester. Today we'll be hearing from Jerry Dees on the topic of e-textbooks in Catholic schools. What are the options? Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to point out a few aspects of your GoToWebinar tool pane. Everyone in our audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. Questions may be sent to our presenter through an instant message. Please take a moment now to find the box for typing questions. Simply click the send button in the bottom right corner to send the questions to our presenter. Now that we've gone through some quick technical information, I want to extend a very warm welcome to our presenter, Jerry Dees. Jerry is a digital publishing specialist here at Ave Maria Press. He's also the creator of the popular website, The Religion Teacher, which provides practical resources and effective teaching strategies to religious educators. A respected graduate of the Alliance for Catholic Education program at the University of Notre Dame, Jared holds master's degrees in education and theology, both from Notre Dame. He has taught in Catholic schools and parish religious education programs, and his articles have appeared in Momentum, Today's Parish, and on numerous websites. Jared, welcome, and thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. Here, I will take controls over, and let's begin. Okay, so yeah, it's great to be here. Great to talk about textbooks today, or e-textbooks, really. As Chris said, my background is more in teaching and theology, but just along the way, I picked up a lot on the digital stuff. So what I do here at Ave Maria Press is I manage a lot of our website initiatives. I also do our e-books for regular spirituality books, and I also look over our e-textbook program. So today I want to talk a little bit about the challenges that schools are faced with when they're switching to a one-to-one program, some of the choices that they need to make, some of the questions that they need to answer, and also talk a little bit at the end about some different ways of teaching that are given to us through the technologies that e-textbooks provide. So we'll be looking first at the devices, the e-readers, the format, and then the distribution methods. If you have questions at any time, I have a second window up and I can watch the questions coming in, so feel free to type them as I go along, and I'm happy to address those as they come up. So the first thing is there's lots of different moving parts when it comes to e-textbooks. There's lots of different devices to choose from. There's many, many different e-readers, and it seems like more every day. For our purposes, there's different file formats that we have to worry about, and there's also different methods of distribution. There's different ways that schools and students get access to printed books, but there's also even more and more complex ways of getting access to digital textbooks. So we're looking at each one of those things first off today. So what I want to do is look at it through the lens of a teacher, and this is our Mrs. T. She's the techie teacher in St. Agatha Catholic School. She's the hip teacher, and because she's so tech savvy, because she's so new, she's been given the opportunity, or the task really, of taking on the e-textbook program. So she's starting to do some research. She's starting to figure out what other schools are doing. She's starting to look into what publishers have to offer, and she has lots of questions, and she has lots of decisions to make and lots of options to present to her administration. So the first decision that she needs to make, and the school needs to make, is what kind of devices are the kids and the teachers going to use to access e-textbooks. And these are the two major devices, of course. The first one on the left, on the upper right-hand thought bubble, is the iPad. And the iPad offers a lot of different positive options, or positive benefits to using them in schools. First off is the battery life. The iPad lasts a very long time, and you wouldn't have to worry about recharging the iPad during the day. If the students are using them in each class throughout the entire day, the battery life will last without plugging it in. We just have to remind the kids, of course, to make sure you plug in your iPads at night or in the morning before you come to school. But even then, they do charge pretty fast if you need to plug them in during lunchtime. The other thing is the size. If you think of the size of a laptop sitting on a desk versus the size of an iPad sitting on a desk, it's pretty striking how different it is. And not only that, but think about the backpacks. One of the major benefits of switching to a one-to-one program, of switching from textbooks to e-textbooks, is that the backpacks are much, much lighter. And even the iPad is much lighter than a laptop. So the iPad definitely offers a great benefit of size and weight that you can carry it around really easily. If you know, some of the schools that have iPad programs, they have kids are carrying around much smaller bags than even they did when we had laptops in one-to-one programs. The other thing is the apps. There's lots of exciting apps for educational use, for organization purposes, for note-taking, for all different aspects of education and also just life in general, and there's lots of different opportunities there. The downside, of course, is that kids can download games pretty easily, apps that are games, and then those can be distractions during school if the school doesn't have control over what can be uploaded and downloaded onto their accounts. But there's lots of educational apps that are interesting. Admittedly, theology classes are still lacking some really interactive and creative apps, and we're constantly, of course, thinking about what we can do to offer make those offerings available. The other thing is the e-reader capability. So a laptop definitely has access to e-readers, but doesn't quite have the same book feel. I think Steve Jobs always throughout his career, wanted to have a computer that looked like a book, that was the size of a book, and the iPad literally is that. And it really is like an e-reader, just like a Kindle or another kind of e-reader. It gives that size and feel as if you were holding a book-size device. And finally, the tech people tell me that the iPad is really helpful for safety purposes. It's not kind of prone to viruses and that kind of thing, so it definitely protects the servers and the databases, etc., that the IT people are very worried about. So I tend to hear good things from those people. Of course, consult your IT people in making this decision. They'll be able to tell you much better what are possibilities and what they can do internally. But the laptop also has a lot of advantages as well, and a lot of schools recently have decided to stick with the laptops or to switch to laptops instead of the iPad. One major point is just the word processing, is being able to type and create is much easier on a computer. But then, I've kind of forced myself in the last couple of months to try to write with the iPad, and to believe it or not, it does get easier as you start to practice it and you start to use it for writing. I don't think I would ever write a long form content as I would on the computer, but you definitely get used to it and get much better at typing on the iPad. But the laptop is much easier, or regular computer is much easier to type papers, essays, etc. And there are also, I say apps because there still are applications. Maybe I should have spelled it out because that seems more accurate for the computer. But computers have applications that the iPad doesn't have, or if it does has, it's kind of limited. So creating PowerPoints, creating different presentations, or doing some video and audio and those kinds of things, there are certain apps for the iPad, but the laptop makes it a little easier in some areas. The other thing, I didn't know the best way to put this, but just the fact that, typically if you enter the workforce today, you're given a computer to do your work. So it might be good to train our kids to be good at using the computer as opposed to a tablet device. But then again, even if you're a senior in high school, who knows what kind of technologies will be in the hands of the college graduates 5 years from now. So it's hard to say what the future will hold. The iPad's only 3 years old, of course. So, but for now, at least, most companies are providing laptop computers as their main device that they use, and then also maybe a iPad or iPhone or smartphone to supplement the work that they're doing. Like I said, if you have any questions as they're going through, please don't hesitate to type them in and communicate them to me. I can read them and follow along and try to address them if you want to ask something that you can't wait till the end. So the first question is what device. The second question is who should buy the device. Should the students and the parents be told to kind of go to the Apple Store or to go to Best Buy and buy their computers, or should the school buy the devices and collect them at the end of the school year, wipe the memories, and then return them back, reissue them at the end of the summer? Those are some decisions that you need to make as well, is who's going to buy it, and then even more than that, how are you going to pay for it if the school's going to purchase them? Or how are you going to communicate to the parents the different cost? If it's built into, is it built into the tuition? Is it just an increase of a technology fee? How do you, if you own the devices, how do you communicate the terms of use? How do you have them sign a paper, etc.? Do you have like kind of a manual? Those are all some of the things that schools are doing. Usually when they do decide to buy iPads for their kids, they do have a lot of kind of new procedures and systems that they need to create in order to communicate, frequently asked questions, the technical side of things, but also just like the usage policies. Another thing that we've been seeing in the last year or two is the kind of a bring your own device method, or BYOD. So you have a hybrid model where a school doesn't just say to a student, you need to have this device, but they give them the opportunity to buy or bring in the device that they want. So they may have iPads, they may have computer laptops, or they may have just a regular old printed textbook and bring it into the classroom for learning during the day. Some schools have been more open to allowing cell phones. I know when I was a teacher, if a cell phone came out in class, you immediately had to confiscate it and turn it into the dean's office. But today, a lot of schools are moving into a model where they're accepting the use of smartphones inside the classroom as long as they're being used for educational purposes. And we can get into a whole discussion probably about how do you manage that and how do you oversee that. But the argument is if the kids are using the technology before they come to school, they're using the technology at home and after school, and they're able to learn at a much more kind of a faster pace, why slow them down during the day and kind of make them downshift into kind of a slower technology or no technology at all? So that's the argument that's out there. That does bring up some different challenges as far as getting kids access to different books. If they're going to bring their own device, they also have to decide how are they going to access the textbooks. And it can be a challenge if each student has a different device and each student may have a different version of the textbook, and it may be difficult to get everybody literally on the same page. So what are the most popular devices that we see in schools right now? We don't have any hard data on this necessarily, but just based on what we're hearing from schools, based on the phone calls we get, based on the sales that we have, of course the number one device is the actual printed textbook. If I had to make a guess on how many Catholic high schools in the country used printed books still, I would probably say somewhere around 85, 90%. So about 10 to 15%, maybe even as high as 20%, I don't know. Catholic high schools in the country have switched to a one-to-one program. I don't think it would be lying to say that about at least over 100 schools have made that switch or are making the switch this year. Shockingly, though, maybe not so much shockingly if you've used an iPad, but in the last year or maybe 2 years, it's been pretty obvious that most schools are switching to a one-to-one program are switching to the iPad. That's pretty incredible that 3 years ago there was no such thing as an iPad, and now that when most schools think about where they want to go in the future, school communities get very excited about switching to an iPad program, and even more so than the laptop programs that were around for the last, 10 years or so. So the number 2 device in schools that we're seeing right now is probably the iPad. And then third after that, of course, is a laptop. A lot of schools that had one-to-one programs are sticking with their programs, sticking with their systems that they have set in place, the different devices that they purchase on an annual basis. They may have kind of a tablet PC that they're using, one of the PCs that the screen can flip around and you can write on it, etc. So those schools aren't necessarily getting rid of it and switching to the iPad necessarily, but we still have a lot of schools that are kind of legacy iPad or legacy laptop schools, or are deciding to switch to the laptop instead. But it's pretty clear that the iPads are already surpassing the laptop Catholic schools. We don't see a lot of schools buying e-readers for kids. We'll definitely have schools that allow e-readers to be brought into schools, but because they're not easy to access an e-textbook or digital textbooks with e-readers like the Nook or the Kindle or the Kobo devices. Even with the Kindle HD or the Kindle Fire or the Nook HD, they're still hard to access e-textbooks with those devices, so they're not quite as easy to use in a school setting. But we do see some schools asking about this that are interested in making that switch. And finally, we don't, of course, have schools that are buying iPhones or smartphones for their kids, but we do have some schools, as I said earlier, that are allowing their students to bring in their smartphones to use for educational purposes. I know I personally like to buy Kindle books and read them on my iPhone. It just is one of my favorite ways to read books now, and that is just my personal preference, and I can see where a student might have that same preference if they're reading, let's say, a novel they might want to read it there as opposed to buying, the paperback version of it. So we know what once you've decided the devices are going to have, the question after that is who will buy the books. So whether or not you bought the devices as a school or if the student bought the device, the next question is who's going to buy the actual textbook or the e-textbook for themselves? Are you going to have the students go and buy it on their own? If that's the case, you have to decide on what types of where they can access the book. Are you going to buy the e-textbooks as a school and then distribute them to the students? And that also offers some challenges. The other thing that a lot of schools are realizing is that there's kind of an assumption that if you switch to e-textbooks, you're going to save a lot of money. So you buy the device and then you save money on textbooks or textbook costs. But if a school is buying books and recycling them year after year, renting them out each year, they might find that it's actually not much more cost-effective to switch from a printed textbook to an e-textbook, because even though the e-textbook is cheaper, if they're recycling the book each year, they're using the book each year, or they're giving out used copies each year, it might kind of equal out. Now, for our purposes, we need to be able to meet both groups, of course, but a large number of schools don't actually, especially high schools, don't actually do that. A large number of schools don't buy books and then rent them to students. They have the students themselves or the parents themselves buy the book. And we've seen a number of schools that maybe were buying books on their own switch to this model where they're asking parents and students to buy the books, printed textbooks even, in the cheapest way possible. And it also works pretty well with e-textbooks. But the question that we'll come up to in a minute is what's the format that they're going to access it in? And more than likely you're going to have to, even if you don't buy the e-textbook, provide a guide for what format to use the books in, just again so the kids are literally on the same page when they're in the classroom. So the question is not only a device, not only who's going to buy the device, not only who's going to buy the book, but how will the kids actually read the e-textbooks? It's not as simple as it might be. There isn't like a e-textbook button on every device that's going to be consistent no matter what you do. So that's offered a number of challenges for us, and we're trying to navigate that as best as possible. These are the decisions that we've made, and I want to kind of walk you through those options now, and then present the capabilities of each one, and then also just the other options that are out there. The first one that we've been doing for the last couple of years is a PDF site license. And essentially what that means is we would work with a school, and that this would be in a situation where the school would be buying the books on behalf of the students. The students wouldn't be able to buy books from Ave Maria Press with a PDF site license. We make a contract with the school, and once everything's signed, we'll actually send the files to the school to then distribute for the year and then take back at the end of the year. So it's really in the school's responsibility to take care of that, to manage the files, and to distribute them and to take them off the devices at the end of the year. If you're using an iPad, the e-reader we suggest, and there's lots of different PDF reader apps out there, quite a few, but the one we like the best is called Good Reader, and it's got a little green icon with like an eye and a folder. It allows you to do all the things that a more complex e-reader would do: highlighting, note-taking, you can draw on the margins, searching, etc. So it really is a good option. It really looks good on the iPad. It's much more advanced than reading a PDF on a regular computer or PC or laptop. So that was what we've been offering for the last couple of years, and this year we've expanded into a couple of different options. Literally just a year ago, the Apple announced a new kind of iBooks app that would allow e-textbooks. And this, inside of that app, there's a lot of different interactivity and options that we have as a publisher to increase the or improve the educational experience of a textbook. So we immediately this summer put out 2 new books in the iBooks platform that are available only in the iBooks app and on the Apple iBooks store. And they offer some really exciting new features, and there's definitely a more intuitive design. So we've been very excited about that. So we've been working in-house to convert our regular books to regular textbooks to this iBooks format. But it takes a lot of time on our part to do that. It's basically redesigning the book. The design is very similar to the printed book, but it offers some different features and exciting things that that are a little bit more advanced. So that's an offering for some books that are out there, some of our books from the framework series, the UMCCB framework series, and we're working on those on an ongoing basis to get them out as soon as we can. The other option that popped up just this year, or the end of last calendar year or school year, and then over the summer, is an app called Direct Digital. And the MBS customers will know this pretty well already. That they may be using it already. MBS came up with a way to access ebooks both through an iPad app, but also through the computer on the web, on your smartphone. There's an app on Android devices as well, and we really were excited about the capabilities that it had. I'll talk about them more in detail in a minute, but they really did a great job of designing the app, and we like the fact that it's able to be used no matter what device that you have. So in this case, the PDF site license, you can only use the PDF or access the PDF through kind of a PDF reader, but it's there on a device. It's not like it's syncing with other devices. Same thing with the iBooks, eTextbooks. You have to be in the iBooks app and on an iPad to access the book. You can't access it on your smartphone. You can't access it on your computer. But the Direct Digital offering allows you to access it on an iPad, on a computer, iPhone, smartphone, with Android, etc. So we're excited about that. So those are the three options we have for iPad schools. If you have a PC, again, you can use the Direct Digital as well. That's an option, and I'll show you how to log in to see that in a minute. There's also the PDF option. Unfortunately, the computers don't make it easy. Regular computers don't make it easy to read a PDF. By default, the PDF is opened into a Adobe Reader, which doesn't allow you necessarily by default to highlight and take notes. It's a little harder to do. There's other options. You can load it into, I think Microsoft OneNote is probably the best option. A lot of schools were using that when they were doing the one-to-one programs. That allows you to import a PDF into OneNote and then take notes and type in the margin. It tends to take up a lot of memory, but it is a capability. It is a possibility. And again, this is one of the easier ways to get kids to access the books if you make that site license with the publisher, with us at least. As I mentioned, some kids are accessing their books with a smartphone. So what are the options there? If a student has a smartphone, they want to access their eTextbook. Well, they can't access, if you have the iPhone, even though you have the iBooks app, you can't access an eTextbook or an iPad or iBook textbook or Apple textbook using the iBooks app because it only is available on the iPad. So it just won't show up in your iBooks library. But it does. There are apps like Goodreader that allow you to read a PDF, and the Direct Digital app is offered on the iPhone, and it looks just as good as it does on the iPad, but of course just a little smaller. So this kind of lays out the different options that we are offering, and I'll mention some others in a minute. The prices that are on the top, $7.95 for the PDF site license per student per year. The iBooks, $10.99 typically, and Direct Digital would be $11.95 typically. All three options are available on the iPad. Only the PDF site license in the Direct Digital is available on a PC or a Mac or laptop. If you make a PDF site license, you need to have a contract. But the other two options do not require a contract with us, at least. Can you get instant access to the PDF? It takes a little time for us to get the contract signed and then to get the files over to you. But if you're having students buy iBooks or buy through the Direct Digital platform, then they can purchase those things immediately. All three options do make it possible for a school to purchase on behalf of the kids. That's the only option for us is to have the school do it. The iBooks, it's a little bit more difficult. You have to contact Apple to make that happen, and we can work with you on Direct Digital if you would like to have a school purchase. But it's those two options, the iBooks and the Direct Digital, are more intuitive for students to buy things on their own and connect them to their Apple accounts or connect them to their Direct Digital account. All three do offer offline access. We get that question a lot, but even if you have a PDF, obviously it's not going to need to be connected to the internet. iBooks does not require you to be connected to the internet. It syncs every time to the internet when you're logged on. Direct Digital, you can check a book back in. So if you're reading the book on your iPad, you can download it to the device and then check it back in and then download it to another device in case you don't have access to the internet. Otherwise, you would be reading on it on the web. Consistent design, PDF obviously has a consistent design. It's the design we made for the printed book. The iBooks takes a little longer for us to create because we are redesigning the book. We definitely make it consistent for the most part, but it isn't exactly the same. There's different pages. There's different layouts. The sidebars have sometimes their own pages as opposed to literally sidebars. There's more interactive features within each page than just the regular static pages. Direct Digital offers both. This is another thing we liked about them a lot is it has reflowable text, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but it also gives you the opportunity to switch over to view the regular printed books. The original printed book is available, whereas the iBooks, you can access it with the regular design in the iBooks, but it doesn't necessarily show you what the original books look like. So if you have kids that have some are accessing the book in the eTextbooks or the Apple iBooks, and some are accessing their print or some are accessing Direct Digital, it might be difficult to get them on the same page. The other thing we like about Direct Digital is that it has page numbers so you can follow along if you have just a print book. Where iBooks, the page numbers are a little bit different, so we don't have the consistent page number with the original printed book. PDF site license do not have reflowable text. You can't make the text bigger, so you can't make the font size bigger. But iBooks you can if you turn the iPad. It's a pretty cool thing. If you have the iPad set horizontally, it's in a set static design, but if you turn it to make it vertical, I wish I could show it to you, but then it turns into a reflowable text. And Direct Digital's default is reflowable text, so it's been converted into XML, and you're able to resize the font as you're reading the book. And again, as I said, one of the things we're most excited about for the Apple iBooks option is just the fact that there's a lot of interactivity that is possible. So we can make some different features like figures that are more interactive. There's images that can be used as a gallery as opposed to just a one static image. So a lot of exciting things, and I'll show some of the highlighting and study cards features in just a minute as well. And I talked about the e-reader apps that you can get for each one. There's some other options out there that we're definitely taking a look at or considering. Really, we're just hoping that schools are going to be interested in these things, and once they are, that's kind of the reason for us to move on. Follett Cafe Scribe is one option. It's a distributor e-reader that they have out there that is a possibility. Ingram Vital Source is also an distributor that has an e-reader that is out there, and then the Flannery Company is coming out very soon with something called Digital Cerebrum, which is new and also something that schools might be interested in as well. Those are some other options that are out there for maybe next year that we're considering and for the future. So that's kind of the portion of Mrs. T's portion. Now we're going to kind of shift into a little bit about what that means for publishers, and also we'll get into kind of the teacher aspect if we have some time of what it means for teachers and how can teachers teach a little bit differently with these books. So for our purposes, why things have changed a little bit and why things have been pretty challenging in the last couple of years is just that the file format has changed. So originally, when we were making a printed book, we had designed the book in Adobe InDesign. In years past, we might have used something called Quark, but today we use Adobe InDesign, and then it's created or exported into a print PDF that can be sent to the printer. Sent to the printer that can be then made into an actual printed book. Well, today we still do that. We still, of course, export it into a PDF and send it to a printer to be printed, but we also have to convert it into another format that allows it to be used in an e-reader. And the issue is that there's not one set format like an e-book format that's going to allow us to make that happen. It's really challenging because we really need to redesign the book almost completely. So it adds a full another step into the process. And for each type of, or each version of the book, it really does just multiply the amount of time it takes to create an e-textbook. So this was our process before. Somebody would write the book, and someone in-house would edit the book. We would design it, it would be proofed, and then it would be published. Well, today it's much more complex. The same first few steps are there, write, edit, and design. Then the printed book is proofed. But then we need to convert the printed book into an e-book. So then it's either designed in-house or it's sent to an outside conversion team. And then whether or not it's designed in-house or sent outside, we then need to proof it in-house. And of course that takes a lot of time because in the conversion process there can be a lot of errors that occur by converting the book. And then finally after the proofing process it can be published as an e-textbook. So that's why you'll see a delay We may have, right now we're just kind of playing catch up with the different books, but you may see a delay when a printed book is coming out. We may not have the eTextbook version out right away. At this point, we do have all of our eTextbooks available in PDF immediately, of course, and so the PDF site license is always available with all of our books. Same thing with Direct Digital. All of our books are available in Direct Digital, and we'll have the first 3 books. We have Jesus Christ, God's Revelation of the World, and Jesus Christ, Source of Our Salvation, both out in the iBook store, and we'll also have any day now the second book, His Mission and Ministry.
Hey, Jared, can I jump in there real quick?
Yeah, please.
Jesus Christ, His Mission and Ministry actually went to Apple this morning.
Oh, great.
So it should be live within the next 24 to 48 hours.
That's awesome, and they're usually pretty quick about that, so that's exciting. So check that out. We'll have the link up as soon as we have it in the store. We'll be able to link it up for you. Maybe in the email follow-up to this webinar, we'll be able to share it with everybody. And you can always download if you have an iPad, you can download a free sample of that. It gives you like the first 50, 60 pages or whatever, and you can kind of play around with it. It's pretty cool stuff, so that's exciting. So I'm going to move on a little bit to not so much the technical eTextbook side of things, but the actual teaching features that are kind of exciting for teachers to be able to use in class. So please do, if you have questions about kind of the technical side of things, ask them now, and we'll address them towards the end. But this is moving in less administrative and more into an educational portion. Just real briefly before we go into some questions at the end. So there's lots of different features that eTextbooks generally have because of the e-readers in which they're being accessed. So I'm going to go over kind of the major ones and to look at some of the little intricacies that are out there that allow you to do some exciting things that are a little bit different than teaching with a regular textbook. First is highlighting. And I just posted on our Engaging Faith blog, which is at alvinmariapress.com/engagingfaith, one word, Engaging Faith. I posted it not long ago. Let me find it, pull it up here. Hope everybody can see that. So this is our Engaging Faith blog, and I wrote kind of a tutorial on how to use highlighting, the highlighting feature, particularly in the Apple iBooks, but it's also available in most e-readers. Goodreader app and the Direct Digital app will also have the ability to highlight in different colors. And there's some creative things that you can do with that. I think one thing we take for granted is that kids should know how to highlight when they're reading. They don't, because they've never been taught how to read that way. So as a teacher, even a theology teacher, we really need to teach good reading skills. So we need to be able to teach them how to use the highlighter effectively. So, what do you want them to highlight? Do you want them to highlight full paragraphs? That's probably not very productive. You want them to highlight certain sentences or certain words that are going to be summarizing main ideas. This is what I'm talking about here, is just how do you help them highlight. And the focus has to be, of course, is you're highlighting because you want to come back to something later. So you're encouraging them not just to highlight as they're reading, but highlight things that are going to be important for them to remember at a later time. So this is something that teachers need to model, so something that we probably as teachers need to get good at so that we can show our students what the best way is to highlight and then process the information to be able to understand what we've read. And the interesting option that eTextbook readers have is that when you highlight a printed book with the highlighter, you can never get rid of the highlight ever again. So you highlight something and it's always going to be bleeding in pink or yellow or green highlighter. But that's not the case with eTextbooks. You can highlight something and then delete the highlight, or highlight something in yellow and then change it to green or blue or purple or red. And that's a great way to think about how students are learning. One way you could do it is use it as a pre-reading strategy, is have them before they actually read the text, go through the text and highlight in green what they know well, highlight in blue what they understand maybe a little bit, highlight in red what they'd never heard of, and then you can come back to those things either individually or in groups when they're learning or when they're reading things in class. If they have things that are still highlighted in red at the end of a lesson in your textbook, ask them to share those with you either personally or as a class, and then address them as a class so that they can master that information before moving on to the next thing. So this is, I think, one of the most easiest ways to use the different colors to really engage with the students as they're learning and to use it as kind of a formative assessment tool. So you're following along with what they know so far. You know what they know. They're able to do kind of a little meta learning, a little metacognition. They're able to think about what they know already and what they don't know quite yet so that they can process it and search for things that they don't know. So that's one of the exciting way to use highlighting with eTextbooks that are not quite able to be used in the same way for printed textbooks. The other thing is study cards, and most e-readers have note cards for learning glossary terms. I think the best, for sure, by far, is the iPad iBooks study cards, which really offers some really fun ways of doing this. By default, again, I wish I could show you this, but I can't hook up the iPad to the GoToWebinar presentation. So I'm just going to kind of show you some screenshots from this post. This is from October, but it's, again, on the Engaging Faith blog. You can search around for it, or it's under the Tech Tips topics on the side here. So by default, it has glossary terms, but you can also switch on in the study cards the highlights. So you can use highlights as a way to study or review what you read. So you can flip through highlights in your study cards as well as notes. So I won't go through this in detail. You can go find this on the blog, but it's got a lot of different ways of using this feature. So you can use it as just a way to just study the glossary terms that are in the back. You can also use it just to flip the glossary terms, but you can also use it to answer review questions. So here, if you look at this really closely, it might be hard to see, but if you highlight the review question and then type a note as an answer, you can turn it into here the note. This is the highlighted. This is the note we made, and this is the question, review questions. Here's a review question. Here's the answer that we typed in, and we can edit the answer in the note whenever we want. So that's another fun way to use this study card feature to study not only the glossary terms, which can be kind of static, but also to use the highlights that of the different texts, or maybe highlighting key terms that aren't glossary terms, or highlight it and then add a note to review questions that you can come back to and study again within your glossary terms. Yeah, so find that on the blog. It's I think pretty nice and helpful tutorial on how to use this cool feature. Again, we just talked about notes. You can use that just in books in the iPad to study in your study cards, but it's also a kind of a fun way to use not only summarizing information. You can have the kids highlight a paragraph and type a note that summarizes what they've read, but you can also use it to have them ask questions. So as they're reading, ask them to type questions about what they're reading, either for you or questions that summarize different sections. They can kind of read what they're reading and then ask a question that might be a good question that would appear in the review section. And they can use these in class to study with a partner. They can use these in class to ask you as a teacher what they've read about. But that's one way to use the notes feature. And of course, eTextbooks have the capability of searching. That's really, I think, both exciting and kind of scary for teachers, because pretty quickly, using the search function, they can find the answers to questions almost instantly. And it makes homework time pretty quick. They can find it, type it, the term that they're searching for that might be asked about in the question, copy and paste the answer from the text, maybe work on it a little bit or maybe not into their answers before they hand them in for homework. That's kind of one skill you would want to teach kids is if you are going to copy and paste from the book, you really need to reword them, read a word, put things into your own words before turning it in as homework. But I know that kids, before the technology, they would just type, or they would literally write by hand, word for word, what was in the book. Well, if they're using this eTextbooks, they're going to be doing this much quicker because they're just copying and pasting without changing. So we need to give them teach them to process and think creatively about the answers that they're making, so they're not just copying and pasting information. But the fun thing is that you can search throughout the whole book. If you're studying about the prodigal son, let's say, a story, you can search where it appears throughout the whole book. So if you're having a test on a certain topic and you're studying for it as a student, you can search for where it appears in Chapter 1, but you can also search and read about it in Chapters 3, 4, or 5. So it kind of connects the entire book, so that's exciting. The other thing is that the glossary terms are typically appear in the search feature, as well as the notes. So here, divine revelation, of course, is a key term in almost every Catholic textbook. It's going to appear in the glossary, but it's also going to appear in the running text. And it may even appear in a note that the students are making, or a highlight the students are making as they're going through the book. Finally, I mentioned this briefly a little bit about reflowable text. If you've ever read an ebook on a Kindle or a Nook or an e-reader, you know that you can resize the font. So if the book isn't set on a certain size, no matter what device you're reading on, you can make it bigger or smaller to see larger amounts of the page. That's why it's challenging with page numbers. So if you read books on a Kindle or Nook, you'll see it has locations at the bottom and not page numbers, because there is no page number anymore. With reflowable text, the text is always running. It's a matter of where you are within the book. Sometimes they connect to page numbers, sometimes they don't. But it's really helpful for the reading experience to be able to do that. And there isn't like one page in which you can learn. And this is actually interesting for learning, because many people read books in a visual way. I know, just look at the Bible, for example. I remember where certain passages of the Bible appear on the page. So I kind of I flip through maybe a chapter, or flip through the gospel looking for a certain story or parable based on where I remember reading it on the page. Well, you can't do that anymore. So it's the same thing with textbooks. You can't try to remember where you read something in a textbook according to where it appeared on the page if you're using reflowable text. At the same way, you can resize things and make it easier to read. We get a lot of, more and more than we might expect, schools calling about students with visual disabilities, and they need to be able to access books that have reflowable text and make their text a little bit bigger. This is a screenshot from the Apple iBooks. And again, you can change the size of the font. So if you turn it sideways, or maybe right side up, I don't know which way for the iPad, you can change the size and make it bigger or smaller. But if you flip it horizontally, the words are static. You can't make it bigger. It's laid out in a certain design. That's the same case for ebooks that have been converted. A lot of e-readers that we're seeing out there that are sticking with kind of a static layout, so they maintain the design of the book, and they allow you to highlight it and take notes, but it's kind of the XML, the website is overlaid on top of the actual PDF, so you're able to take notes and highlight, but you're not able to resize the text necessarily unless you zoom in and kind of move things around. It's not the same as a reflowable text, because you're just kind of zooming into an image of a page. And one feature we like a lot, you're able to do that with the iPad if you turn on the global settings that allow all things to be read on the iPad, including ebooks. But one thing we do again like about the MBS direct digital option is the ability to highlight and then have the book be read in an audio form. I'm going to pull it up real quickly, hopefully. If you are interested in the direct digital option, we have a storefront for these books. It's at avimariapress.digitaltextbooks, plural, digitaltextbooks.com, and it has all of our books there. All the framework books are here. You can search by subject, you can search by title or ISBN. Once you buy the book, if you're going to use this option, you still need to go to avimariapress.com or avimariapress.digitaltextbooks.com if you want to access your books on the computer, and then you go to manage your account, and you go to My eContent. And if you click on My eContent, it will pull up your digital bookshelf. And you can access it here on a computer, but you can also access it if you have the app on an iPad or the iPhone or another Android device. And I'm going to open it up, Jesus Christ, God's Revelation of the World. And I don't think you'll be able to hear it, but one of the options they allow when you highlight a text, in addition to highlighting and taking notes, I'll pull it up there. So you can search, highlight, take notes, but you can also listen. So you probably can't hear that, but it's reading from kind of a computerish version or computerish voice what it sounds like or what the words are. And it really isn't too bad the way that it reads. It's pretty understandable. So that's a nice little feature. And I should point out just while we're here, if you're asking. So this is what it looks like. This is reflowable text. So if I want to change the size of the font, I can. And it changes the look of the book. I can change it back to make it smaller. And it has page numbers as well. So this text is actually on the page 2 of the printed textbook, and page 3, etc. This image is on page 3. If I want to switch to the book view, it's right down here. I just go down here and click Book View, and you can see what it looks like in the original design of the book. So we kind of, as a publisher, we like that. We want to make sure that the original design is still there, especially if some kids have the actual textbook and some kids have the actual printed textbook and some kids have the ebook. This is a nice way to maintain some kind of consistency. So if you want to find out more about what we have to offer for eTextbooks and in general, answers to eTextbook questions, you can go to avimariapress.com/eTextbooks. We have the 3 options that I talked about here that we offer for this year. I also have kind of a frequently asked questions when you're trying to decide if you're Mrs. T, what you're going to decide for devices, and once you have decided on a device, which option is best for you. This kind of walks you through the decision-making process, and then you can explore the different options that we have available. We talk about each one on this page. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions for me about eTextbooks in general? It could be about making the decision to switch over, or how to teach with textbooks. Now would be the time to do that. Taking a drink. Chris, I don't know if you have any questions or things that I might have missed as I was going through.
I don't. We actually do have a couple questions there in the queue too, if you want to pull that up.
Yeah. We have one question about your life in Christ. What about your life in Christ, since you already have that text? Yeah, your life in Christ is available as an e-textbook. Someone is asking about Bluefire, and I'm not really familiar with that actually, so I'm not quite sure of that option. So maybe if you want to talk to me about that, you can send me an email. We can talk a little bit more about that in detail. But
I did send that one person a question back about your life in Christ, Jared, just to find out exactly what they wanted, and they haven't responded back yet.
Okay, good. We have a couple comments about just the excitement of switching to eTextbook. I want to definitely affirm that. That's definitely an exciting time for us as teachers, an exciting time for schools. So there is a lot of information. If you want to give me a shout, please, by all means, shoot me an email. We can talk a little bit more in detail about it. Peggy asked how will the teacher resources be available if we purchase textbooks? Teacher's manuals, will they be provided as ebooks? So those are great questions. First of all of our online resources are always available. If you go to our homepage and Teacher Classroom Resources, all of our books have classroom resources. Whether you use the printed book or the eTextbook, they're all going to be there and available for anyone. But about the teacher manuals, will they be available as eTextbooks? We're definitely exploring that option. One hurdle we're trying to get over is the fact that our teacher's manuals aren't just teacher's manuals, but they're teacher's wraparound editions. So the image of the page of the student textbook is embedded within the teacher's manual, and we have a lot of positive feedback about that layout. So we're trying to figure out first, how can we convert that into a digital format? And just in reality, the time it takes for us to do the printed text or the student textbook really inhibits us from really being able to do the teacher's manual very easily. But we're definitely looking at some options for different distribution methods and making that a possibility, so that you're, as a teacher, not switching to a kind of a regular printed textbook or printed teacher's manual, but being able to access the teacher's manual on a device as well. So we don't have a definitive answer for that right now, but we're definitely exploring our options to be able to use the resources we have in our hands to be able to make that happen. Any other questions before we close up? Okay, well, Chris, I'll hand things back over to you if no one else wants to chime in.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Jared. I appreciate it. The presentation was really good. For those of you that want to connect with Jared, I just have a screen here that shows both his email address, but then also the website that he manages through religionteacher.com. So you can find out more information about him and just different ideas that he's able to present on both of those places. I also just wanted to mention, for those of you that would like to order a review copy of our textbooks, you can do so by completing the online request form at www.avemariapress.com/examination_copy. And I've put the link there on the screen for you. You can also get a feel for our e-textbooks by downloading the sample chapter PDFs found on each textbook's product page, or by also going to iBooks or through MBS and downloading the samples there as well. As Jared mentioned, all information about our eTextbooks can be found at avimariapress.com/eTextbooks. In addition, I put a little link there for roundtables. Periodically, we go around and meet with different high schools in different dioceses. And if you'd be interested in having someone from Ave Maria Press host a roundtable with high schools in your diocese, please send us an email. They're at reled, R-E-L-E-D, @nd.edu, and we can set something up with you. Also, I just wanted to mention that if you're not already following Ave Maria Press in one of these different social networks, please go ahead and look us up and follow us. We're there on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, the blog that Jared mentioned, and also Scribd. And also just wanted to mention to you our next webinar that we have. Please mark your calendars for Thursday, March 7th. Our topic is going to be why it's important for high school students to study Scripture. And we have a brand new textbook that we just released called Sacred Scripture, a Catholic Study of God's Word. And so we'll be talking about not only this textbook, but just in general why it's important to cover Scripture in your high schools. I just want to thank you again for joining us this afternoon, and we hope to see you next month. Thanks a lot.